Hello and welcome to this presentation about writing a case for support for fundraising for your church. My name is Becky Nicholson. I work at the Diocese of Leeds as the Lead Stewardship Officer. I've been working there a year or so now, and I have a background in teaching. I've not really done any teaching online like this before, so this is new for me. And I also hold a diploma at the Institute of Fundraising. You can see all my details and contact information here on this slide. So if you have any questions or queries about anything I'm going to tell you today, please don't hesitate to get in touch and we'll do what we can. So welcome to you all. Thank you for coming once more. This presentation will be split into three parts. We're going to be looking at what a case for support is and debating why you actually need one. What should be included in the case for support? What sort of information needs to go in there to appeal to the widest possible audience and to make the most possible persuasive case? And also how you can use that case document to gain support for your church. What do you do with it once you've written it, and where can you reproduce it, and how can you reproduce it? So first of all, what is a case for support? Well, your case for support is a marketing tool. It should elicit a response. So it should be one of those pieces of information that somebody reads and feels compelled to want to either know more or want to support, preferably both. It should demonstrate a clear purpose and call to action. It should tell people exactly what it is you do, and it should tell people exactly how they can support you, in other words. And it must bring your work to life and spell out what you want to do, what your vision is, and why you want to do it. So you need to cast a compelling vision for somebody who doesn't know your church necessarily, but can be persuaded to understand what it is you're trying to do and want to support you. Your case also shows evidence of the impact of your work and the benefits for the widest possible audience. So you want to gain support from the widest possible audience, and you want to tell them what it is that you do so that they think, they provide something for me. Therefore, I think I ought to support, or I think I would like to support, or I would like to join in. So you're talking about how your work affects many people in order to get the support of many people in return. So people want to support organisations who cast a compelling vision. And as you approach people for their support, they will want to know why they should care for your church's work. Well, you know they should care. You know the difference your church makes to your community and the people within. So the case for support is your opportunity to show other people why they should care. It's a very persuasive document. It takes a little bit of skill in writing. So if you think about all the people that you communicate to and how you do it, you might use leaflets and posters in the church. You might have a website or a church near you. You might use social media, Twitter, Facebook or Instagram. You might publish a parish magazine that goes out to the village or the town where you live. You might put adverts in local press, local media, and you might want to write grant applications. Well, a case for support will enable you to do all of these things. Wording from the case statement can be lifted and placed into any sort of communication channel that you choose. If you get the case statement right, it saves work further along down the line. So what information needs to go into your case for support? Well, a good idea to start with is explaining the history and the background and the context of your church. Apologies that the text has just run off the screen slightly there. I'll read it to you. So a good opening paragraph gives a bit of a flavour of what the church is, how long it's been there, and what it means to people. So St Mary's, founded in 1820, has a long and proud history that spans almost 5 generations. And next year we will be celebrating our bicentennial, 200 years of serving our God and our community. While facilities and faces have certainly changed during that time, one thing remains the same: our commitment to Christ, to one another, and to the betterment of our community. Our parish today is an active and increasingly vibrant community. With the recent addition of a toddler group and cafe church, we have seen the engagement in our church activities double over the past 20 years, from 55 families to over 110 today. Led by a dedicated minister and a strong group of lay leaders and volunteers, there are increasing numbers of ways that people of all ages and backgrounds are participating in the spiritual, educational, social and service ministries of our community. Now, obviously, that paints a picture of a church that's growing and thriving, and I completely understand that a lot of our churches are not going in that direction. However, it's also very useful if you're not as lucky in a sense as this church, to paint a picture of an aspiration of what you want to be, of where your church is heading, and give people an idea of the way that you're going to do that. So if you had more space, you could offer this to young people. If you had a warmer church, then it would be more accessible to people who have got special needs or accessibility problems. So paint a picture of your church as you would aspire it to be if you're not in the situation that St. Mary's is here. So following on from the opening history, background and context paragraph, the next bit really ought to be a rewriting of the vision and mission statement that you've taken from your church documents, basically an outline of why your church exists. And two examples are here, and I'm sure that there are as many different examples across our diocese as we can think of, many permutations of how mission and ministry goes on in our churches. It just gives people reading the statement a flavour of why your church exists. Next, it's important to write what is distinctive about your church or your project. Every single church is unique in the sense that it offers something slightly different. And here's some examples. There's different spiritual and pastoral care that goes on in our churches. So highlight those and celebrate them. Talk about healing ministry if that's something you offer. The weddings, the baptisms and events that bring people together and people in your church to celebrate these lifelong milestones. Talk about any heritage and art that is in the church, important stained glass or carvings or pews, stonework, anything in the grounds that's important and has a national or local significance. Any groups that use your church, and these may not necessarily be religious groups, that groups just meet for worship, but groups such as young people or the uniformed services or mother and toddler groups or exercise groups, anything like that, anything that is distinctive and brings people together in your community, in your church, and your church is the facilitator of that. And perhaps there's school and mission links that you have in church. Maybe the vicar goes to speak to the children in the local school each week, or schools are invited to come in and learn more about God and Jesus and how the church operates in the community, and appreciate everything that's there for them, the symbols and the artwork in the church, as well as any mission links that you may have overseas. Other things can go in the case for support, really. These are just examples. So on this slide, I've just tried to put down a few ideas of how you can explain in your case document what impact you have on people's lives. And basically, this is an overview of the sorts of activities that you're offering in your church. I've just put a selection of a few things that I know go on across our diocese, and I know there are dozens and dozens more. Equally, I know there are plenty of churches that would love to be able to offer more, but just don't have the facilities. So even if these things aren't going on in your church, it's still very important to state them as something that you really do want to engage with and get started, because you know there's a need. I think it's really important to think about and to celebrate the work as well. So not only are you highlighting what it is that's actually going on in the church, it's the impact that it makes. So for example, the 22 people at Cafe Church enjoying a spiritual and social activity, and you could elaborate on that, about what it means to young people to engage in a spiritual and social activity, as well as the messy church that brings families together for biblical celebration through creativity. And again, you could expand on that by perhaps including photographs of people engaging in the creative aspect of messy church. A picture often speaks 1,000 words, and when people see that the activities are engaging, that people are taking part, that people want to come, and actually you can't do it any better because your facilities are holding you back, or in fact you can't do it because you don't have the facilities. That's what people want to support, and that's the kind of idea that you want to put into their minds to portray the fact that you can provide something if only you had a bit of help. So you've painted a really good picture of your church. You've shown people what you do. You've painted a really aspirational picture of what it is you want to achieve and accomplish. Now's the but thing. Now's the paragraph where you explain that what you actually have isn't adequate enough to do what you want to do. So here's an example for St Mary's Church. While we are blessed to have our parish community and ministries flourishing, we also realise that our church facilities are 90 years old and were built for a much smaller parish. In attempting to meet the needs of our burgeoning faith family, our facilities have been stretched to their limits and beyond. Our lack of adequate space is having an adverse effect on our ability to serve our members effectively and will become an ever-increasing problem in the future. And here's a bit more. In our busy church, our current facilities just can't accommodate the growing number of committees, ministries, organisations and activities that our parish participates in. Groups like Little Fishes and others don't have adequate space to meet. In short, we lack a classroom and meeting room that many of our church groups require, and this lack of space has forced some groups to meet in various inconvenient and less appropriate spaces, such as the rectory basement in the church. And there's a little bit more as well, a little bit more persuasion to back up the argument about the fact that we don't have what we need. We also only have one toilet for gentlemen and one for ladies with disabled access. We have a small and inadequate 8-foot square kitchen, which is fitted with domestic units and 2 small domestic ovens. We hear a consistent plea for better facilities so we can be more effective in fulfilling our mission and better serving the needs of our community and doing God's work. I think what's sort of prevalent through those last 3 slides are the use of those verbs that really stress the importance of what we need in order to get some work done. Inadequate, a consistent plea, we need to be more effective. All of these words I think are quite powerful in trying to persuade people to support you. So do use them and do get people to read through what it is you've written to make sure that your argument and your case is as compelling as it can be. So after writing all that prose about your problems and what you need to do in order to reach your goals, it's a good idea to succinctly and carefully write down in a few small sentences what it is you exactly want to do. That just shows that you're organised and you're very clear in your mission. I call them SMART targets. SMART, as many of you know, will stand for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time-scaled targets. It gives people an idea of how long the work's going to take and where their money's going, really. I've only put 4 here. I know a lot of churches will have a huge shopping list. It's a good idea if you can to try and keep that shopping list down to one specific project. If you know you've got multiple phases of a project, approach each individually because people will be a bit baffled and confused if you're trying to ask for too much. So this is for St Mary's Church, our fictional church. It's the extension really that's going to include the new restroom and the new classrooms with toilets. Also just expanding the kitchen. So target number 2 is to combine the existing toilets with the kitchen to create one large kitchen to fit out with industrial catering units. And you've already said how much that's going to be used because of all the groups that use the facilities. Number 3, upgrade all audio visual equipment to equip the classrooms so they are as good as they can be. And then a modern room divider system to the existing church hall in order to be able to have a more multifunctional space. And of course, put your time scale on there by December 2020. So you've highlighted what it is you want to do, and now is the time where you can tell, or you can write how your campaign will enable what you want to be accomplished to actually be accomplished. So state it in bold letters. We need to raise £150,000 to complete all the work necessary. And just then elaborate on how a donor's support will help you reach your target, your goal, through the generous, prayerful, volunteer and financial support of many, and the extraordinary support of a few. We believe we can succeed in our task. As a result, we are also confident of our continued growth as a community of faith and in our ability to even better do God's will. So once you've painted a really compelling vision for your church and you've said what the problems are, by now anybody reading will be starting to think that they want to support you, you would hope anyway. So don't miss out the ask. Don't miss out telling people how they can get involved. So whether you want to ask for donations, when you want to ask for volunteers, you might want to ask for people to come and visit so they can get a real picture of what it is you're trying to do. If you're writing for grants, of course, you'll want to say to a grant funder or request a grant funder just gives your application some consideration. Don't miss this bit out. It's really important, and lots of cases for support do forget this bit and leaves the donor confused. So you've talked to your donors about your wonderful church. You've told them how your facilities aren't as good as they could be in order for you to fulfill your mission and your vision. You've got to now tell your donor what their support will mean to you and what it will mean to them. I call it the so what question. People have read that you've got a need. They might say to themselves, well, so what? That doesn't affect me, especially if they're not part of your church. Well, you would hope people who are part of your church will want to support you. But if you want to hook in the most people possible, if you want to get the biggest buy-in, you'll need to give people lots of reasons to want to buy in. And this one's very typical in our Christian donor audience, giving back to God for his goodness, giving back to him for his generosity and love to us. And that's often used in church literature when there's an appeal for money or an appeal for volunteers. But if you're talking to a secular audience, you'll need something else. It's talking about how their gift will support valuable work in the community could be quite relevant, particularly if they're a community spirited person, or if they know somebody who uses what goes on in your church. Maybe they have a grandchild that comes to toddler group, or maybe they are considering coming to Tuesday Teas to join in with the rest of their community in a social activity. How about talking to them about heritage? For a lot of people, heritage is crucially important, and our landmark churches across the diocese are very important and very respected and valued by people who never step foot in them. So talking to them about how heritage could be preserved for future generations, or how the church has been there for 200 years and it still wants to keep going for another 200 years. It could be quite useful, quite interesting to some donors. Better facilities and services will be available for all. We're talking about how if the church is aiming to become more disabled friendly, if it has more facilities in terms of toileting or kitchen facilities, it will provide another use for the church that people in the community would find valuable. So maybe there isn't a church hall in the area, a place where people can meet, but with a new kitchen, with more toileting facilities, the church could become that hub. Sometimes people like to be recognised for giving gifts, and a lot of churches have gone down this route and offered a donor an opportunity to be recognised on a donor wall, for example, or buying a brick. Or in Wakefield Cathedral, donors who have donated to buy chairs have had a little plaque put on the back of the chair to give their family name. Or even if you're not inviting people to buy a tangible part of your project, why not invite them to a special event at the end, a VIP ticket for their support? It makes people feel really special. So don't forget to, in the case statement, somewhere towards the end, to leave your contact details in case people want to find out more. Maybe a phone number of a person who's leading the project, or nowadays people leave the website address so people can go and read up more about your project online. And explain clearly what you would like potential supporters and funders to do next, and how they can make a gift, and give them a range of gift making opportunities. People like to or like to be able to give electronically these days because the lack of cash that's in circulation. People don't tend to carry cash. So give them an option to donate that is easy for them. And many people now just do it from their armchairs. So if you can offer a text to donate number, or a Just Giving page, or even Bax details or PayPal details where people can make a gift, it's really useful. Make it as easy as possible for somebody to give you something. So towards the end, you'll want to make sure that you do sound quite credible and trustworthy. And it's a good idea just to put a piece of A4 together that just paints a picture of the governance of your organisation. So who is it in your PCC? Who are volunteers that are involved? Maybe you might employ staff, definitely the vicar's name and contact details, and any non-financial resources that you may have. So you might have access to more buildings, or you might have, some churches have flats that they sublet now, or run cafes in the community. So make it sound like your organisation is credible and sustainable. People really believe that you are crucially important in the community, and that you have the backing and support of as many people as possible. Put planning documents in there as well, in an appendices. Think about strategic aims for the future, maybe feasibility studies or architect's drawings, just very simplified versions, because I know when projects are planned, the paperwork mounts up. But if you think it's going to be relevant to a donor to see what the CAD drawing is like, or what the blueprint of the footprint of the building is going to change into, then put it in by all means. Anything that helps the donor envision what you've got in mind is useful. A statement of the nature of the planning process. So maybe a timeline saying what it is you want to do now, what it is you want to do in 2 months' time, and where you want to be by the end of the year, and towards completion of the project. It's also quite useful to put an indication of how you hope to raise the money, because the case statement will be going out to many people. And if a grant funder is thinking of giving you several £1000s, they're going to want to know how you're going to raise the rest. So an idea is to put together a table of where the money is going to come from. So a certain amount from grant funders, a certain amount from the community. You can raise this through an event that you may be running. You can raise this amount by putting a digital machine in a community event that's going on in the school, for example. So just break down where you hope the money will come from. It gives people confidence that you are able to raise the money that you hope to be able to raise. Now, the appendices are optional, and when you're conducting a project, there will be plenty and plenty of paperwork that you start to accumulate, and some of it will be really relevant in your case for support. People like to see things, for example, like surveys, just an overview of a surveyor's report, their idea of what they think of the project and how it will impact the building as it stands now. And any professional reports, it's reassuring for some people to read that any changes to the fabric of the building has been approved or is going to be sensitive to that building. Photographs, perhaps any photographs that show the inadequacy of what it is you've got now, and any existing support and testimonials, support from people who can say, well, actually, if we had a bigger kitchen, we could do more, or just tick charts of people who have said, yes, we think this is a good idea. Yes, we would use the church more if this was the case. just anything really just to back up what it is you're proposing. It gives people confidence that there is support for it. So you've written your case for support. It's very carefully crafted. It's been checked by people who are not associated with your organisation, and they make sense of it and they feel that it's compelling, and it is a real call to action, and it's very persuasive. Now, how do you actually use it? I mean, a 6-page document is a bit unwieldy, for example, to put on social media. Well, the idea is that you take bits from it and you use those relevant bits and you tailor them for the audience that you're speaking to. And if you've got one case document and there's 20 people in the PCC who are all sharing information about the project, one case document is going to ensure that only one message goes out. So it's a really useful document to get consistency of message across, but also it's a really useful document so you're not having to rewrite things, and your social media officer isn't having to make things up that may be slightly different to the person in charge of the website, for example. So here's just a few examples of where the case for support can be used: tailored, shortened, slightly rehashed according to the needs of the communication. So on the leaflets, for example, you may want to put a brief, the case in brief about what it is you want to achieve on the website. The website could link to the full case for support for people who want to read more. If you're introducing the parish giving scheme and you're intending to raise money through the parish giving scheme for your project, it's important to use the case for support in any launch that you're doing or any communications that you're writing. Of course, it's useful on social media because social media can drive people to donation pages, view sheets, and on grant applications, a grant writer will thank you for writing a case for support. It makes the job so much easier if they know they've got consistent and previously agreed case document that has been approved by the clergy and the PCC. It just makes writing a grant application so much easier because they can just lift information straight off. So how can you use the case document to get support? Well, here's a little bit of fundraising psychology for you. Now, when people are writing a fundraising case, when fundraisers are writing a fundraising case, they try to put 4 elements into the case. So they present a vision, they present an enemy, that's something that's getting in the way of the vision. They portray the donor as the hero that can help the vision or help them defeat the enemy. And then they paint a picture of the recipient who's very happy at the end because they've got what it is that the donor wants to support. So here's an illustration. So the vision of St. Mary's is that it's been offering Christian support and community events for the people of Longton for 200 years. The enemy is that the facilities are not useful anymore. They're not suitable for the growing numbers of people who want to enjoy what is on offer. So if we read the case document, we know that those facilities are inadequate toileting, the kitchens are too small. The hero is the donor who has the opportunity to make a lasting gift that will enable our support for your community to continue. So you can already see that the hero can help achieve the vision by defeating the enemy. And finally, the recipient are the families, the young people and the elderly who need St. Mary's. Obviously, give people a way to donate, as we've spoken of before. And it's important, if you're using the vision, enemy, hero and recipient model, to try and flatter the donor. Use words like kindness and generosity. It will make people feel that kind and generous because they're supporting what it is you're presenting them. So you don't feel compelled to use this model when you're writing any literature to get people to support you. but be assured it is a tried and tested model that fundraisers have used since time immemorial and probably will use long into the future. And I think you can see how compelling it is for people to be made to feel good if they're donating to something. And you can do it by some very careful wording. Now, another way that you could use your case statement, once you've highlighted what it is you want and you've written some very succinct and carefully worded and understood SMART targets, is to present some products to a donor audience, because people tend to like to want to give money thinking that it's going to buy something very tangible. Just a word of warning here though, you've got to use very careful wording when you're product pitching in fundraising. There is a difference between the words could and would. So if you're saying to people that your £50 would buy or will buy a sink for our new toilets or a tap for our new toilets, it's actually, people are actually getting something in return for their donation, and therefore you can't claim gift aid on that donation. If you use the word could buy us a new tap for our bathroom, then that's completely different, because then the money is actually going into a fund that is used for the whole project. So be very careful with your wording here. So just some examples that I've put together here of some products that you may be able to use, or you could think of something more creative. £100 could pay for our Little Fishes group for a whole month, enabling young families to come together to explore Bible stories through play and friendship every week. Now, who wouldn't want to give £100 to that? What a really nice thought. And also, if you've got another group of people that meet, maybe the seniors that meet, use a quote. Maggie's written a quote here. Maggie looks forward to coming to lunch club every Thursdays. She says we can often spend several days without speaking to anyone, and lunch club brings people like me who live alone together. £25 could pay for a lunch club. It's quite powerful in fundraising to package things up into neat little packs like that. One thing I would say is, if you are product pitching, is give a range of price points according to what people can afford. If people want to give £100 but you're only asking for 25 because you're only offering a lunch club option, you might be doing yourself a little bit of a disservice there. So offer things that cost different amounts of money. Here's a couple more examples here, just a bit of humour into your documentation or your literature. £500 could buy a shiny new toilet. £1,000 could buy the hand basin too. One toilet between 30 or more people is no fun. We are in desperate need. And I have heard of churches with one toilet and a queue looking a little bit like that, of humans waiting to use it and events not being able to go ahead because there isn't the facilities. And there's a very common one that's used by churches who are undergoing building, buying bricks. So buying bricks or buying slates, or I've seen buy a pipe for the church organ. Again, you can offer different price points here. Gold, silver, bronze bricks, for example, I've seen that work. Offering people the chance to buy a gold brick. It could just be in name only. It's just it doesn't exist in physical form. It's giving people the option to give more if they want to. So there's some ideas of product pitching. That is really my presentation finished now. I'm making a case for support. As ever, you can contact me on the following details there if you have any questions, and I'm really happy to read through case for support documents. As an outsider, it's often a really good idea to get an extra pair of eyes looking to read through and seeing that it makes sense to people who are unconnected with your church. Thank you for watching, and do contact me if you need any other help for anything in fundraising in the church. Thanks again.